Just as genes and cultures adapt to the environment, so too do cities. My city, Halifax, situated alongside one of the world's largest and deepest ice-free harbors, has always taken its character from the sea, in times of war, in commerce, and in immigration. Its history is what it is, like all history everywhere, some good, some bad, never to be whitewashed or rewritten. Halifax, what's in a name? Shakespeare's Juliet once asked. Contrary to what my great-uncle Ron tells me, the name of my city is not Micmac for a Wales lady part. Instead, my city is named after George Montague Dunk, 2nd Earl of Halifax and one of its founders. To tell the truth, I kind of like my uncle's version better. Before my city was an unfertilized egg of an idea in an English monarch's head, the land was populated by indigenous persons and Acadians and pirates. How diverse, until the English came. And come they did. My city was founded in 1749 on a treacherous act, the violation of a treaty with the Micmac, and it was a treachery that led to its first taste of war with the Micmac and the Acadians, Father Le Loutre's War. The bloodshed would last for 6 years. The loss of life, the atrocities committed by both sides were unimaginable. Men, women, children, even babies were mutilated. More wars would come, many more. It was a deep-water harbor town after all, an easy place to garrison and maneuver troops by ship. There was the French and Indian War, the American Revolution, the Napoleonic Wars, the War of 1812, the Crimean War, the Northwest Rebellion, nothing to do with Kanye's kid, I assure you, the Second Boer War, World War I, World War II, the War on Terror. In each of these conflicts, Halifax and its people played a part, sometimes on the side of angels, sometimes not. Ironically, in my city, the largest single-day loss of life in wartime occurred during the First World War and was but an accident. On December 6, 1917, the French munition ship, the Mont Blanc, carrying 200 tons of TNT, collided with the Norwegian freighter, the IMO. Until the Trinity, New Mexico detonation of the atomic bomb, it was the largest man-made explosion in history. 2,000 dead, 9,000 injured, tens of thousands homeless. The north end of my city was decimated. Ironically, the settlement of Africville was spared, by the explosion at least. The black refugees were Africans who escaped slavery in the United States during the War of 1812, many of whom settled in Halifax and established the community of Africville, separate and apart, separate and unequal, so long ago. Those were different times, right? Their tight-knit community was razed to the ground in the late 1960s to make way for a bridge, a second bridge. We can always use a spare. The community was dispersed, neighbors, families torn asunder, not so long ago after all. My city did apologize, more than 40 years after the fact. Too little, too late? You decide. Eventually, they were given a little church on the old Africville site and a tiny park where middle-class Haligonians now go to walk their dogs. Thankfully, not all immigrants were treated quite so harshly by my city. Pier 2, built my city's north end in 1880, was one of the major ports of entry for new immigrants to Canada, largely Europeans. Immigrants arrived in such numbers that a new facility, Canada's Ellis Island, Pier 21, was built in 1928. From its opening until the last gangplank was lowered in 1971, more than 1 million immigrants were processed into my city, into Canada, by this one facility alone. Most left the East Coast to travel west, to Quebec, to Ontario, to the great undiscovered West. But many stayed and made the city what it is today. My city, thanks to Hollywood, has become a part of pop culture history. In the early morning of April 15, 1912, the British passenger liner, the Titanic, the great unsinkable ship of legend, struck an iceberg off the coast of Newfoundland and sank. Rescue efforts were immediate and my city played a role. The cable ship C.F. Mackay Bennett out of Halifax was the first to reach the site of the sinking. Of the 333 victims recovered, 328 were retrieved by Canadian ships. The survivors went to New York. The dead went to my city. 121 were laid to rest in Fairview Cemetery, including a gravesite marked The Unknown Child, since identified, and Jay Dawson, no relation to the Jack Dawson character played by DiCaprio in the film of the same name. 29 others were buried elsewhere in my city. My My city, the more things change, the more they stay the same. The clipper ship from days past entering the harbor laden with cargo are long gone now, but larger, infinitely more advanced container ships have taken their place. The tall ships of war present at its founding are also gone, but the harbor remains an integral part of my country's defense, with frigates and destroyers taking their place. My city, Halifax, a city with a history 269 years young. I take the good with the bad. I apologize for the bad and remain thankful for the good. I apologize for the circumstances of its founding. I apologize for its treatment of the Africville residents. I apologize for the deaths it brought about in any unjust war in which it played a part. And finally, I apologize for Titanic, the motion picture. Despite the fact that several scenes were shot in my city, and despite the presence of Chet from Weird Science in the frame portions of the film, I found it to be both manipulative and contrived. On the other side, I am thankful for many things. I thank my city for providing a home to so many immigrants and refugees over the years. I thank my city and its people for the way it responded to the disaster that was the Halifax explosion, and for the way it treated the victims of the Titanic with the respect they deserved. I thank my city and its people for the part played in ending Hitler's reign of terror in World War II, and for the aid given to New York by its citizens after 9/11. I thank my city for its world-class institutions of higher learning, including Dalhousie University, established in 1818, St. Mary's University, established in 1802, and Mount St. Vincent University, established in 1873, and the many others whose very existence has contributed so much in so many ways to the history of my city. I thank my city for its many wonderful parks and museums, the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic, where artifacts from the Titanic disaster and the Halifax explosion may be viewed, Pier 21, Citadel Hill, Point Pleasant Park, York Redoubt, the public gardens, each with their own important story to tell. Warts and all, Halifax is my city, past, present, and future. My city, Halifax.